You're welcome along to the Keith Andrews Show. Back with you again every Thursday at 12:30. Nathan joining me today in the hot seat. Thanks for coming in, buddy.
Quite afternoon. Nothing to talk about.
Any ideas what we should?
No, I don't know. What big championship game are you doing tomorrow night?
Ipswich, West Brom.
Let's get into that. Let's get into West Brom and what's going on behind the scenes there. That's what people want to hear right now. Go on then. Were you surprised when the news came through yesterday?
I was surprised about the phone calls I had when I was out walking my dog and I came back. I thought someone had died. Yeah, I was surprised in so much that I just expected us to just trundle through towards March, try and put a positive spin on it, even after the game the other night. I'm sure you probably picked it up. His whole body language and energy probably wasn't there. The hunger in Martin's demeanour, I didn't think it was there. But I just expected it to go through. So I am surprised, but only because I didn't think financially it was a viable option for the FAI to come to this kind of agreement, and how much it's cost them, I have no idea. So that did surprise me, but it's the right decision, without a shadow of a doubt. And I would have to say, for all parties, not just the players, the FAI, the general public, but I would throw in the management team of that. I think they needed it as well.
Is it ever the right decision if you're part of a management team to get fired?
I think the, maybe not the hunger, but the life and the energy had been dragged out of him over a 12-month period that has been really, really tough. And I don't think they felt they could really get it going again.
It's funny you say that, because being at the press conference on Tuesday night or on Monday night in our house, and also thinking back to the game in Cardiff where we lost 4-1, there was no spark for Martin O'Neill. I went into those press conferences expecting him to be tetchy, annoyed, reactive, argumentative, and on both occasions he was just very calm, very sullen, didn't get into any real disagreements, said the right things but with no energy to it. And I sort of thought, actually, he's showing his experience there, that we're all expecting the fight.
But in hindsight, maybe.
But actually, maybe what you're saying is right, that he was just a bit fed up.
I didn't catch that in Cardiff now, I have to say. And I know in a few of the subsequent games since, he has come out with his tetchy side and snapping back at certain reporters. But I certainly sense it after Monday.
You're right, though. It is the right decision. And the most striking aspect of all the coverage, actually, over the last 24 hours or so, is that I haven't heard a single person say that it's not the right decision. Everybody seems to be in agreement. Yeah,
it's interesting, because I obviously work a little bit in England as well, and the consensus over there will be very different to the consensus in Ireland.
But who cares?
Like, I agree with you.
I couldn't give a damn.
Yeah, I'm just trying to paint the picture of what's over there.
Brilliantly, throughout his entire time, is he's kept a lot of the English journalists very, very close. They get all the access. All the stories that break are given to the English journalist. And all the spin in all the coverage yesterday was, what had he to work with? He has nothing to work with. The players aren't there. How can he be expected to do any more? And they've fed that out again and again and again to the Premier League Championship loving public, who think, Martin O'Neill's doing all right, but his hands are tied behind his back. We're here. We watch the games. We see every single minute of every game, and we know, and we should expect more from Irish football than what we've been given over the last year. So who gives a damn?
I'm with you. I totally agree, and you're right. We live, we breathe it, and we've had to suffer it over the last 12 months. Before we get into the nitty gritty of it, just going to go over a little montage of the Martin O'Neill reign.
I think I'm the bad cop, and I think he's the bad cop.
Very excited. I mightn't look it, but I am.
Privileged being manager of the Republic of Ireland. I'm genuinely excited by it.
We want to make Irish football great. We want to go to the Euros. We want to get to France in 2016.
Deep for Hendrick, who rescues it. O'Shea! Absolutely amazing finale! John O'Shea comes up with a big moment that could well have earned Ireland a point at the home of the world champion.
And Randolph sends it long. And Shane Long's in behind the defence. Shane Long against Moyer. 1-0! What a moment! Shane Long, Ireland take the lead.
When Wes Hoolahan is on the pitch, Ireland score a goal every 46 minutes. When he's not on the pitch, we score a goal every 133 minutes.
Checks back, he go again, he does go again. Crosses back to the edge of the penalty. Hoolahan! Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes!
How good was that?
Hourihane. Inviting is there! Robbie Brady brings us all to our feet in Lille.
Tyler looking for options in front of him down the right hand side. Plays a good ball. Look at James McLean and acres of space down the left hand side. Can Hourihane find him? He can. Chance for Ireland. James McLean inside the area. Yes! Ireland lead in Vienna.
Getting to the end line here, Jeff Hendrick gets the ball across. Arthur steps over, breaks to McLean.
There's also going to have to come a time where Ireland deliver in Dublin, which has been the issue throughout this entire campaign.
Helped onto Eriksson, brilliant goal, and Denmark lead 2. Sisto driving towards the edge of the area, flicks it inside to Eriksson, curls one left-footed, absolute quality, world class from Eriksson. Porter to Ward again, and Eriksson rattles in his hat-trick. What looked like the dream start has turned into a nightmare of epic proportions. Ireland have been destroyed at the Aviva Stadium tonight.
This is tough. This is really tough. We find it tough. We are usually playing against sides of superior quality usually. We were well beaten tonight. We could have been 2-0 in front. It might have been a different story. We can fight back.
And that was the question, Martin. I was just going to ask you, please.
You just before we did our interview, you actually said to me, hard luck. You know, just before we went on air. And what did you mean by that? You know.
Well, it's very disappointing to go out in a playoff, isn't it?
Yeah, you did say hard luck. You weren't being disingenuous about it, were you?
No.
It's just a real verbal attack, wasn't it? You know?
I wouldn't think so, Martin, to be honest with you.
Well, I spoke to John very recently, and he said on behalf of the board, they would like to extend my contract for another couple of years.
Has the FAI been undermined by this? Because he had verbally agreed it, so you probably thought, okay, he's locked in. But then he went and spoke to other clubs, particularly Stoke.
Well, that's happened in the past. I mean, Martin has always been very open with the association as to who's approached him, so he's had many approaches.
Allen sliding it in behind. It's a chance here for Wales, and there's a goal for Wales inside the opening 5.5 minutes. Straight onto the chest of Gareth Bale, brilliantly controlled on the edge of the area, onto his left foot, and there's only one outcome when you've got one of the best players in the world. Gareth Bale with a sensational goal. Yeah, it's Ampadu who's flying forward this time, plays it through to Aaron Ramsey. It's 3-0.
What is the role of the assistant manager? It's certainly not to be giving players stick who are not training.
Ask you about the WhatsApp audio that came out this afternoon, allegedly detailing the bust-up between Harry Arter, John Walters and your assistant Roy Keane during the summer.
It wouldn't be the first conversation, it wouldn't be the first tete-a-tete, and it certainly wouldn't be the first altercation between players and staff.
We were like a team hanging on for a 0-0 in a World Cup match. Desperation. We get out with 0-0 and we've qualified, or we've got a great point. But this is a game that it's a dead rubber. We're out of it.
We are making progress, yeah.
And your enthusiasm, is it still there for the qualifiers that will be upon you in a few months' time?
Well, I think that, I think since in my professional playing career and in my managerial career, which is, a fairly lengthy time spanning over both, I don't think that I could have won the things that I won, both as a player and as a manager, if I didn't have that driving enthusiasm.
It was really good. You made me happy every single day.
Sad.
There were some good moments though.
And I think that's probably the aspect, and I was going to ask you this question about, because I was engrossed in the Trapattoni era, is there similarities? Because my take on the Trapp era was it should be seen as a success. When you listen to those clips and the moments that he produced as the manager, I think when you look at Martin's reign, 3/4 of his reign is a success, and he's produced massive moments that will live with us forever.
I think Martin O'Neill's reign was more successful than Giovanni Trapattoni's. I don't know if I'd go quite that far, because while there have been moments, and he's provided probably half the great moments of recent Irish football history, they've been just that. I think there's been a constant decline in the general level of performance, a constant decline
since when? 2016?
Well, certainly like a marked decline since 2016. I don't think even performances over the first 2-3 years were hugely impressive. I think we were getting through games just about.
Are we getting greedy though, Nathan, in terms of like the performances? Because like even when you go back to tournaments we qualified back in the day, like we had Jerry Taggart on last week, that with that level of player that we had even in 1993, the performances weren't amazing. And I know that was due to the style of play that Jack employed, but are we getting a bit too greedy? Because I know what I want. Like growing up, I wanted those moments. I got to go to a World Cup, and I presume it'd be the same for a 10-year-old, 12-year-old kid now. They want that moment. They want it to get us to Euro 2016. They want the Robbie Brady moment.
Well, I think that is the big question that we're now faced with Irish football. Do we want to continue with the never-ending boom or bust cycle where we have one moment every 2 years that qualifies us for a major finals, and then we pray to God we may get another moment at those major finals? Or we put in place a system that we get some sort of a footballing identity, that we're a small nation who plays good, attractive football, who have good, technically skilled players and are willing to give them an opportunity. And when we do qualify for a major tournament, we're not the worst team there that are hoping to get a decent result along the way. We're actually a team that people around the world look forward to watching and go, how do Ireland do that? How is it that such a small country can produce so many good footballers?
There's not many nations, though, that do that. And I know the obvious one's going to be, we talk about the North, and I think that may well have been the last straw last tourism when we were at the Aviva, and the atmosphere was flatlining. And we're looking at a team that just passed us off the park, had a front three, two of them were playing in League One, and it just basically was rubbing our faces in it a little bit. The attendance obviously was down, but it's not.
I wouldn't even look at the North as an example, because I think they're very much a solid structure and they're trying to expand things now under Michael O'Neill. I think we're trying to reinvent something ourselves, that over the next 10 years we put in place a system right now led by a manager with some of the good young Irish coaches who are there, trying to look at the League of Ireland, trying to create a different type of footballer that is then given the opportunity.
That's a bigger picture.
It is, but when do you stop and press pause for the bigger picture?
Not now. Not now with the Euro 2020 on the horizon. You have to get. It's like we'll discuss managerial maybes and who's in the running in a little bit, but I think that's a different kettle of fish. Stick on Martin for the time being in terms of the reign, and you don't see it as a success on the whole. They never end well, do they?
No, listen, no managerial job ever ends well, particularly with the Irish job. And he actually had a good run. Like 5 years in any managerial job right now is a decent run. It was coming to its natural end. And he did give us moments. So I think when you look back on the way Irish football's gone over the last 30 years, you would have to say he has done a good job, because he qualified for some major finals. He gave us the victory over Germany. He gave us the victory over Italy and some big away wins. The night in Vienna was our best away win in 30 years. And he somehow managed to conjure that up. And conjure is the word, because everything we've heard, even in the last 24 hours, suggests that nobody quite knows how it happened. But that he had that magical power of somehow getting things right on the big occasion. And strangely, Brian Kerr has been very forceful, and rightly so, over the past 24 hours. Like, I would say Brian Kerr had his Irish team playing at a consistently higher level than Martin O'Neill ever did. But just unfortunately never had that one moment. Never had the goal that he needed to take it to a next level.
Well, it's been the 12 months. 13 months ago, we were both in Cardiff for that unbelievable win, James McLean goal. Produce that type of away performance to get us ahead, and then from November of last year.
Again, is that not being somewhat revisionist? What was producing that type of away performance when Joe Allen was on the pitch?
Yeah, Nathan, I agree with you. I'm not saying what he did before that was brilliant. I said this to you before. I remember going to the drab result in Scotland a few years ago with flying up and meeting friends and family there, trudging back through the streets of Glasgow, not being able to get a taxi with my 70-year-old uncle, thinking, Jesus, this is dire. But so I'm not as much as a purist, I don't think, as most of, certainly the fans want us to play, and some pundits. I would be more realistic. So I can take that odd performance where it's not great for the moments of joy, sheer joy, the tournament.
But can you not have both? Can you not try and play football and still have the moments? Because it feels to me as though the moments are freakish. That there's no real rhyme or reason as to why Shane Long fired in that shot past Manuel Neuer when Germany could have beaten us out of the park that night.
I agree. Can we have both? I think we should strive to have both. We also have to be realistic in terms of what we have to work with. it's too easy to just lay it at the players' doorsteps, and when the players are constantly getting battered by they're not good enough, it's clearly going to have an effect, and it has in particular in the last 12 months. The last 12 months have been nothing short of a disaster. On the pitch, off the pitch, the whole Stoke saga, the contract situation before that. March comes around, the friendly Declan Rice, brilliant. Summer comes around, just get through that. There's obviously things going on off the pitch with Roy Keane that doesn't come out in the summer, but obviously happen in the summer. The Harry Arthur bits and bobs, not wanting to turn up. Declan Rice, different issue, obviously. The leaked WhatsApp, and then the level of performance is just gradually declining, and the enthusiasm and the energy of the players gone.
Everybody, players, management, supporters, just a complete
media
lack of interest.
Like our energy, I said to you last week about when I introduced the show, I was so flat, and I was going to that game that night because it was literally like you knew what to expect.
Old shit.
Yeah, you knew what to expect, and there was no appetite for the game. The lads in the office have been saying the response in the last couple of days, last day, 24 hours since this broke has been through the roof. So there is a passion for this team, but that had gone, and it needed to change, and thankfully it has changed. We want to play, which obviously broke last night. Matt Doherty came out and did an interview last night, and he basically painted a picture which I suppose a lot of us have been talking about, certainly in the last 12 months anyway.
You could class it as old school. There's obviously, we have Portuguese people in charge, so there's a lot of coaching, stuff like that, where when you were with Ireland, didn't really have that much coaching. It was more of a, we'll play a little 5-a-side game or 11-a-side game, and then that would be it. So you lead all the way up to the game, maybe the day before a game, and you do a few set pieces here and there, and then go into the game, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, well, what shape are we going to play? Like you'd have a few players thinking, I think we're going to play this shape, or you might have somebody else thinking, I think it's going to be this one. And you can't really have that, especially in international football. People not really sure on what their role is.
People not really sure on what their role is, what shape they were playing. It kind of knew it, you regardless of what you hear, don't hear, what you see game to game. And you've mentioned about the vision of it, and the way they would look at it in England, very different to over here. We live it, we breathe it, we watch every game. We've been to practically all of them, and then we dissect it in the days before, dissect and the days after. It's fairly obvious that has been going on or hasn't been going on, the case may be, but that is alarming.
It is, and as you say, I think all Matt Doherty has done is confirm the rumours that have been going around for the last couple of years. And actually, I think back to a lot of Ireland internationals, and you would look at them and go, what did they spend all week doing? Yeah. And now we find out, actually, not a whole lot. And part of the problem, and I keep making this point, is you watch Irish players playing for their clubs
better,
and they are better, and they don't make the same mistakes. Stephen Ward would not make the mistakes he made against Denmark last year.
Prime example I always use he is, because at Burnley he knows it inside out, even on the ball on Nathan, steps out, left back, there's never indecision. And I always make this point about the better players. Seamus can, if he gets closed down, he can chop it inside, he can manoeuvre it, and he's brilliant because he's our best player. I was never able to do that. Stephen Ward's not able to do that. He needs the passing option, line, winger, centre forward. What's he doing? It's always a struggle, isn't it?
It is, and you look at the clubs that have been successful in the Premier League. Burnley last season, Wolves this season, have managers who, Wolves you can look at and say they've spent a bucket load of money, but Matt Doherty's remained there because he's obviously responding to what Nuno is teaching him, which is, here's your position, here's your role. And you watch Wolves, they do the same thing in every game. They have a pattern of play, a really distinctive pattern of play. That is difficult to stop, and they'll probably have another challenge next year when teams start to figure them out. But you watch Jeff Hendrick, I know he's having a proper dip in form right now and is dropping out of the Burnley side, but you watch him last season for Burnley, again, playing in that number 10 role that everyone says he can't play.
Not natural to him, I don't think, but still effective.
Still effective, constantly linking up with the two wingers. Every time he picked up the ball, had plenty of options. I know you could put forward the point that you don't have a lot of time with an international team, and there was certainly a time I thought maybe as an international manager the powers of motivation were more important than the tactical side of it, but players and coaching has moved on to a whole new level over the last 5-6 years.
I've been involved in the underage teams a couple of years ago.
So you are partly to blame for all this?
Yes, I am, I'll hold my hand up here. And that was the kind of time when I realised the time constraints, because I'd been in club coaching at MK Dons, and obviously you've got all week, you've got loads of time, you can keep players back in the afternoon, you can send them video analysis, etc. On the international front, and we were working with kids, 16, 17, 18s I was working with, that age group, especially the 18s, when we went in some tournaments against the Netherlands, Germany, you know you're going to be back to the wall. We had to prepare for those games 3 days with a group of players that had never met before as a group. So time is of the essence. So you have to make sure
So what do you do?
Well, you prioritise what you obviously beforehand, you do your research into what you think they're going to do. You try and stop that because you think, let's be realistic, they're going to be a better side than that. So you try and imprint a defensive structure to be difficult to break down, to be difficult to beat, to give you a chance of getting something from the game. And in that instance, Jim Crawford was the manager. And I have to be honest, and I said this to Jim, I thought he focused too much on the defensive side of things. And I would have got more of a balance where I would say it was probably about 80% defensive structure, 20% what we were doing and going forward. He got it right because we ground out results. If we had have opened up, if we had have prioritised too much on the attacking side in that short window of opportunity, we probably wouldn't have got anything from the games, and we've done really, really well. So you're right, in terms of international coaching, time is of the essence, but let's not forget about it. He's been in charge for 5 years, and I know a lot has changed in the last year, and people will say he's given a lot of debuts out. There has been a transitional period, but still more can be done, Nathan.
Oh, and because of the lack of the personalities and talent, more has to be done. Yeah. Like Aidan O'Brien is probably a prime example. We may never have another Robbie Keane. I don't think we will have another Robbie Keane.
He was the exception, wasn't he?
He's
before him.
He is without question, I think, the best player we've ever had performing in a green jersey. But Aidan O'Brien is never going to be that guy. In fact, you know, he scored 1 goal all season. But you would have to think as a manager, your job then is to firstly instill confidence in him and go, you know what, I'm watching you club level, you're going to play for the international team because I see something in you.
Yeah.
And here's exactly what I want you to do. You may not score a lot of goals, but here's your role.
Yeah.
Here's your role in this team. When he has the ball, you go here. When he has the ball, you go here. Rather than what happened the last night, which was Aidan O'Brien dropping 20 yards into his own half.
Sorry for him.
When he didn't actually have the worst game when he actually got in the ball, but just looked totally lost.
Yeah.
So you have to work twice as hard with this group of players than probably you did when Trapattoni was starting out, and certainly 15 years before that.
What you hear about the North is the training regime isn't very enjoyable. Players come back sometimes, certainly in the early days of Michael O'Neill, would be moaning about it, but they got results. I used to always say about Sam Allardyce and Roy Hodgson in 2 completely different ways that I worked under. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew your role. If anything, Roy's training methods were very monotonous, very repetitive. The way our training week would be, craving for, Matt already said it, 5v5s, 11v11, not so much 11v11s, but 5v5s and 8v8s and that type of enjoyable aspect of training. Most players want it. But the nuts and bolts of what we did Monday to Friday on the days we were in, on the training ground, on the shape work, on the patterns of play, in possession for mid to lower Premier League team, which we were at the time, West Brom, it was so easy on a Saturday against good teams. The passing options that I've said to you that I needed, the type of player I was, which I think the vast majority of our current squad need, was just instinctive. It was just there because we'd worked so hard on it. We're going to have Conor Hourihane hopefully.
But how do you get that balance? Like, so why are they successful managers? If you're saying it's monotonous, it's quite boring, players' natural inclination is to come together and bitch about things.
If you get the results, if you do get the results, that is the key. Because if training isn't enjoyable and then you're not getting the results, bang, disaster. That's when it will come to a head. If you're getting the results and we're, as West Brom, we are finishing in the top half of the Premier League, who's going to be complaining about that? Nobody. And that is what these players need. These players will do anything. Whoever comes in, they will go in whatever direction the new manager wants and play in whatever way. Won't they? Because they're a good bunch. There's good attitudes. There's no prima donnas. There's no bad eggs. We just lack a little bit of quality in certain areas. But in terms of endeavour and attitude, it's right up there. But they need guidance.
Well, players probably are going to come under, I think, more intense pressure over the next year or two, because now the excuse is gone. O'Neill and Keane are gone. And talking to Seamus Coleman, he said, players, the criticism of the players is on. Yeah, but also, I think the players have got off quite lightly in a way, because everything has been aimed at O'Neill and Keane. Now they need to step up.
I agree, but it can be an environment where there's lots of bits and bobs going on, and we don't know how frequent it was, that type of incident with Roy Keane, and results over that period of time, and the integration of new players. In an environment that is like that, that's quite negative, that's quite dour, it can drain you, it can sap you. And how often have you heard people say about when your confidence levels are higher, genuinely, you move quicker, you're sharper, you're brighter. It's just something in you. And I think the life has been drained.
And does it just go like that? Like you say,
I don't think you notice
think
it.
back to your first couple of years under Trapattoni. Like, I'd imagine you were getting on the flight on a Sunday evening, absolutely buzzing to be involved in Ireland.
By the
4 years later, are you going,
probably. But I tell you what as well, I think even at the time, you probably don't realise it. You're that engrossed in the environment. And I think that you'll see that by Matt Doherty, the way he's come out. You'll see a different angle from James McLean, from Seamus Coleman, obviously, because they have a real loyalty towards Martin
O'Neill, yeah.
Whereas I had that with Trapp, but having said that, I was still very frustrated at times in the way we played and not letting me off the leash a little bit. Training methods as well, which I've spoken about. Roy, spoken about Sam Allardyce. Trapp was the exact same. We used to moan about little bits and bobs in training, but we knew what we were doing. We knew the plan. We knew the set pieces. We knew how pinicky he was about a front post zone man and how you defend the corner kicks and the pride you used to take in that and backtracking and wingers. McKeady used to moan all the time about what he had to do defensively. He did it. Wasn't great to watch it, obviously, but we did it. We had a plan and we were effective for large parts of his reign.
I guess, in many ways, it's only in 2 or 3 years' time that we're going to really find out what Martin O'Neill was about in terms of whether this was a success or not. Because if the players simply aren't there and we're in a terminal decline of Irish football, we may look back at those moments and go, that was.
Do you think it's a good time or a bad time for someone to take over, like for that respective manager?
I think it's a good time.
Yeah, I do.
I think expectations are quite low.
No, I think exactly. I think it's a really good time because I think the players need it. The players will relish it. We obviously know we're inadequate in certain areas. But I've already mentioned about their character. I don't think you can question that.
But I think it's always a good time to be the Irish manager because international football at our level, so we've seen in the Nations League that League A is actually it's shit hot. The quality is it's right up there. It's not quite at the elite of the club level, but it's not far off. Whereas at our level, a good manager makes a huge amount of difference. We're kind of somewhere between probably the 20th and 30th best team in Europe, which means we'll be there or thereabouts for qualifying.
Yeah.
If you get up to being top 16, suddenly you're in the knockout stages of the Euros, and it's this massive success, as Martin O'Neill knows. So it doesn't take that much to lift you to another level.
Who's the man for you then? I heard you on last night with Kev, and I think you're in the Stephen Kenny camp. So the candidates that we don't know what's going to be on the scenes. There could be someone left field that comes into the equation.
As it has been for the last 2 appointments.
Yeah. Was Martin in the top?
He was always in the mix, but the O'Neill-Keane combination just came out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah, I think that rings a bell, and certainly Trapp came from a little bit out there, didn't it? So there may well be that going on. The two prime candidates at the moment will be Mick McCarthy and Stephen Kenny, and I think you're in Stephen's corner.
Very much so, because I think that this is a moment where we stop, we pause, and we try and rethink where Irish football is going. And not just that, I think Stephen Kenny is the right man for the job right now. A young, fresh, vibrant manager who has been unbelievably successful at club level in spite of having any number of issues to deal with at Dundalk. And I've been looking back on his recent record. So they've won 4 of the last 5 titles. But you look at from their so they won the title 2014. They lose Pat Hoban, their top scorer. They still win the title the next year. They lose Richie Towell, their top scorer and the player of the year.
Yeah.
They win the title again the next year. They lose Daryl Horgan.
Boyle.
Okay, they don't win it the next year. But then they lose more players again. They lose Chris Shields. Stephen O'Donnell is out injured for the entire season. They go and they win the league again. They win the double. And they do it this year, earning more points than any team in history and scoring more goals. So he's not about Richie Towell, Daryl Horgan, 1 star. He made all those players better. Those guys, I know they're going to another level, have struggled to replicate it away for Dundalk. He didn't sit there and moan and go, I keep losing my best players, how can I achieve? You look at their performances in Europe. He didn't go into those games against Legia Warsaw, in the big Europa League games and think, we need to go back to basics here. He thought, this is how we play football. We're going to go and do it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it meant that they went out with their heads held high. And I think it shows the way that he's been able to regroup, and make players better has shown that he is the right man for the job right now. And the boost, the sort of intangible thing that I know a lot of people don't really care about, I just think the boost it would give to genuine Irish football people, of which there are hundreds of thousands, proper grassroots, coaches, Friday, Saturday morning, Sunday morning, who feel that they've lost their connection with the Irish team, that Stephen Kenny, even though it's not a real thing, will give them that. That they will go, yeah, this is one of us.
The attributes you're talking about what he's done, reinvented the team and making players better, the way he acquits himself, very, very impressive. And his pedigree, his CV stacks up. In terms of the grassroots, I don't think, barring Brian's reign as manager, has there ever been a manager since before Jack that's been in touch with that? I don't think people expect to be that much in touch with it. I just think with him, it's too much of a risk. And I think...
Why?
Because if this was a four games into a new campaign, we'd had 2 points, into a traditional campaign, I should say, and it was looking unlikely that we were going to qualify. And this was that transitional phase where you can build for the years ahead. I wouldn't discount that at all, because like I said, I do like him first and foremost, and I've been mightily impressed with how his team have played. But I think with 2020 on the horizon and a real opportunity to get there, hosting 2 of the games, if we are not there, it would be a disaster financially and just how it would look. So for me, you have to go with an element of safety. And for that reason, I would have Mick ahead of Stephen Kenny. Mick with the right backroom team.
You see, you used one word there, I think, that sums it up. Safe.
Yeah.
Like, it's the safe option. But this is the European Championship, and I understand the financial implications of qualifying. It's not a World Cup. It's not that difficult to qualify for a European Championship.
Shouldn't be.
Half the teams go through. Now is the time, actually, to give Stephen Kenny that opportunity, where you're probably going to have a fallback of a Nations League playoff in March 2020, worst case scenario, but he gets a full campaign. There'll never be a right time to stop and take stock of what we're doing in Irish football.
Probably
There'll always
not,
be
but I
the
definitely
next
don't
thing.
think it's now. I definitely don't think it's now. What I would like, and look, I would, regardless who it is, there's going to be a reaction. There's already been a reaction. We've been invigorated already because that management team has left.
Or whoever it is, if it is a complete outsider that we're not talking about, that stadium will be a sellout for the first qualifier.
100%. So it's already worked to a degree. For me, with Mick, he would want to bring in Terry Connor, I would imagine, like he brought in Ian Evans back in the day as the 21s and then in the senior team. I think it's imperative, as part of that process that you were talking about, the growth of the football, got to go and get Lee Carsley. Whatever it takes, go and get him off the FA. Don't know whether he wants to come. Don't particularly know Lee Carsley very well. I know Kev's close with him. His stock as a coach is so high in England, Nathan, is untrue. Coaching with the 21s now, been with the FA, has been offered jobs left, right and centre in England, manager jobs. He is the business, by all accounts.
Well, no matter who gets the job, Lee Carsley should be approached for a role in Irish football. There's no question about that.
That's the level we should be going at. We shouldn't be going with former players because of the name, but if they are a former player that has done the business in coaching circles, Stephen Reid next. Shay Given as the goalkeeping coach, without, no-brainer, absolute no-brainer. Working at Derby County, fine. International break, you're Irish, Shay. You're part of the process and you're going to be here for the long term. That doesn't change. Can you imagine him around the team? It will be unbelievable. His appetite, his enthusiasm, his expertise, the go-between. So you're starting to build a team. And I think Mick would probably be open and be more acceptant of those type of individuals being involved. I think both of them have played under him, so it wouldn't be an issue, along with his trusted lieutenant, Terry Connor. I just think that would get me going. That would excite me. And trying to incorporate maybe one other involved with the 21s, because that's another massive opportunity.
Again, I don't see why any of those people couldn't become involved if Stephen Kenny was the manager. And what we're reading is that the dream team is Mick McCarthy and Robbie Keane.
I think if Mick McCarthy gets the job, I think there'll probably be a role for Robbie in there somewhere. But
why?
Because I think he wants it, and I think he has a really good relationship with the FAI. So I think it will probably happen that they will want to nurture the record goal scorer along his coaching managerial path. So do I see that as wrong? No. But as the coach, as the assistant manager, as the one that's doing the nitty-gritty on the training pitch, Lee Carsley is miles ahead of all the other candidates for that type of role.
Do we not have the exact same problem we've just had, though, whereby the assistant manager would have a bigger profile than the actual manager?
Well, not if he's not doing press conferences every month to promote his own agenda, to keep him relevant, to keep him in the spotlight, which was going on, which was farcical. More reporters turning up for the assistant manager's press conference than the manager for that soundbite. As long as it's controlled, there should be a role if he wants it.
Yeah, sure. No, here, absolutely. 100%.
Should it be as the assistant manager for Robbie Keane right now? No, in my opinion. But should he be part of it? Could he be part? I think he could be part of it. But you've got to balance that out. And when you look at the finances that have been spent on the last managerial package, if you spread that around amongst some of these players, ex-players I should say, you could have a really, really good team for the long term involving that 21s and that capacity to delve into the 19s, 17s and down, which is really encouraging at the moment.
Do you agree with Kilban that Mick McCarthy walks into that dressing room and he gets more respect than Stephen Kenny does?
Instantly, yes, a little bit. But and I've said that, I was only talking about this the other day. Henry walks into the dressing room at Monaco, take out of his punditry kind of role where that probably dropped down a little bit.
Monaco have lost every game they've played so far.
Right, hear me out. I agree with you. I agree. Look, I'm not bigging up Henry. You walk into the dressing room, you have the respect straight away because of what you've done in the game. Within a week, that respect can be on the floor because of how you conduct yourself, how you speak to the players. I had Roberto Di Matteo come into MK Dons. I thought he was the biggest clown I've ever met in football. So arrogant, looked down his nose at certain players. I wanted to move from there at the time anyway, so it probably wasn't the best time we met in our respective careers. But he used to look down his nose at some of the players in that squad because they weren't very good technically. And I hated him for that because of the way he looked and treated and spoke to players. So Henry walks in, that respect can go like that. Stephen Kenny comes in on a lesser level of the ladder, in my opinion. Maybe not as much as Kev has projected, but I think quickly that can go up a few rungs of the ladder.
I agree. I think that McCarthy is the safe option, but McCarthy's not Jurgen Klopp. Like this thing that he's walking into the dressing room and everyone's going, wow, it's Mick, compared to, here's the guy who's actually won 4 league titles in the last 5 years. Who are these players to look down on anybody?
Well, look, it's probably not like it was when, say, Brian took over, and there might have been a few players along that wavelength I think that Kev was alluding to. I agree, we haven't got the elite Premier League players now that are used to a certain level. The majority of our players are Championship, lower Premier League players. That's where we are. I haven't got a problem with that. Let's just crack on with it. And I do think Mick would have the respect bouncing in straight away. But you're Stephen Kenny, man.
Very much so.
Okay, I'm delighted to say we have on the line Conor Hourihane. Conor, thanks for joining us, buddy.
No problem, lads. How you doing?
Good, thanks, pal. Yeah. Well, listen, we're about, I don't know, just over a day past the announcement. First of all, did it surprise you in any way that the FAI made the decision with Martin? It must be said that they would go their separate ways?
I suppose a little bit it did. There was a lot of kind of mumblings, obviously, from the outside of the camp on the situation. But I suppose, you never know in football. Obviously, obviously the results weren't great recently, but there was no kind of, from inside the camp that anything was going to happen. So I suppose when it did break, there was a surprise element there. It's never nice when a manager loses his job, but ultimately, I suppose it's a results business, and the results for us as players and as a group weren't great. And ultimately, that's when the manager kind of gets a lot of pressure on board.
Conor, how difficult has it been? Like, we've all been through different aspects of our career, club, country, where it has been difficult times. I can't remember such a tough time in my career personally, of that long of a tough time. So the last 12 months since that defeat to Denmark, how difficult has it been for a player?
Yeah, it's been really, really tough, if I'm being brutally honest. It hasn't been easy at all. I was probably a little bit lucky when I broke into the squad. My first couple of squads were, with the likes of, John O'Shea and Darren Murphy and Wes, and they had just come back off a Euro campaign, and I was involved in that fantastic night in Wales. You know, and that feel-good factor was there. You know, it was a fantastic group to be involved in, and all of a sudden, within a couple of trips, you know, the squad completely changed. You know, with a lot of injuries as well, and it just felt like that feel-good factor wasn't there for whatever reason. And did I see that coming back anytime soon? Well, I'm not too sure. So, you know, it for the last 12 months, like you said, it's been really tough as a player. It's been frustrating because you want to do so well for your country. It's one of the ultimate kind of honours, you know, as any footballer. So, you know, you want to go out there and you want to do well and you want to perform well for your country, but it just hasn't gone our way. And like you said, the last 12 months has been really frustrating.
I watch you play, Conor, every weekend, depending where I am, and I see you playing for your respective clubs, and I've constantly made the point that we're not seeing the best of certainly you, of Jeff Hendrick, of certain players that I feel I would have kind of similarities to when I played. So when Matt Doherty comes out and says what he says last night, and basically kind of alluding to what I've been saying for the last year in particular, when the results haven't been going our way, how difficult is it when you're not getting that level of detail going into the game and the way that Martin likes to manage?
Yeah, it's not easy. You know, listen, I'll always, first and foremost, I'll always be grateful for Martin. You know, he's given me 8 international caps. You know, I would have snapped your hand off for one. You know, so for that, I'll always thank him. But listen, it hasn't been easy. I'll be one of the first to say, you know, my form for Ireland when I got my chance hasn't been as good as my club form. You know, and that's a disappointing element for myself. But you know, it's hard to say. You know, listen, it's like you said. I think club form from a lot of lads is good. You know, it's very hurtful to hear lads say, you know, that it's a very poor squad or whatever. You know, the worst in years. I don't think that is the case. There mightn't be as quality players as, you know, your Damien Duffs and your Robbie Keane, but I still do feel strongly that, you know, there is talent in that squad if, you know, the right man is there to take charge of the squad and put us in the right direction. Because I've seen lads do it in training or playing against them in the championship. The championship is a competitive league, you know, and lads play well here every week over in England. So, and to go over then and not play so well for your country, you know, something just isn't right, and it is frustrating. So, you know, that obviously, hopefully, will change now with a new manager involved.
It feels as though, in general, the standard of coaching around the English game has gone up a couple of levels in recent years, and that was something Matt Doherty touched on, that they're working with a very innovative coach in Nuno, and spent a huge amount of time in the training pitch coming up with a style of football that's attractive to watch, and also is very successful for them so far this season. I just wonder, when you look at what you've been doing with Villa and what all the players have been doing with their clubs, if I don't want to say it's a step back when you come to Ireland, but if it's just too different, if it's just too old school for what young modern footballers have become used to.
Yeah, maybe so. You know, I have to say here now with Dean Smith. Dean Smith, obviously, Keith would know. You know, the detail that Dean goes into every single game is second to none. You know, we play a very attractive style of play. You know, he leaves no stone unturned for any game. He's not satisfied with going away to, say, Derby and taking a draw. He wants to win every single game. He wants to put our plan across to him, and he wants to play an attacking style of play, and that suits us here. And it's fantastic to play in. Obviously, that not may be the case, you know, when we go over to the Ireland squads. But ultimately, you know, the lads have to, you know, do the best they can for what's put in front of them. Because, you know, yes, you'd run through a brick wall, and so many players would to play for Ireland. But obviously, you know, the detail, I would say that from club level to international level was definitely different, and it was definitely a tougher environment to play in, I would say.
I guess you just said you want to run through a brick wall to play for your country, and it's the dream for all of us when we start out. You know, you've lived it. But when you're sitting on the bench then and you're watching Cyrus Christie being selected in the middle of midfield, and yourself and David Myler and Harry Arter are there, who are playing week in, week out at club level in that position, that must also breed, I guess, an attitude in the squad of frustration that at times can unsettle things. Yeah, listen, you know, you can't really question the manager and what he did. You know, I'd never sit here and criticise any player. You know, when the lads go out there, you want them to do well because you want the feel good factor and the buzz around the squad, and for it to be a great environment to be in. Obviously, it is hugely frustrating. You know, without a doubt, I want to be out there playing. You know, whoever's playing in the middle of the park, you always feel like you could do something different to somebody else. But you know, it was frustrating. Of course, it was. Every player that
the players that you named out there would say the same thing. But that was the manager's decision at the end of the day, and Cyrus played in there, and fair play to Cyrus. He probably didn't feel comfortable in there, but he got on with his job because he wanted to do it for the lads, he wanted to do it for himself and for Ireland ultimately. But it is frustrating, but you just have to try and get on with it as best you can as well.
I don't think it's any slight on Cyrus Christie at all, and I genuinely felt sorry for him covering the games and seeing him playing in midfield. So it's certainly no slight on him, because I've got the utmost respect for how he performs for us in his right position. Conor, I'm a bit sick of hearing, and especially in England more so than over here, I think about we just haven't simply got the players. I just don't buy into it at all. I see a squad of players, which has been saying to Nathan, that you've alluded to it, will run through a brick wall, that have certain qualities. I do think we're lacking in certain areas, but the qualities we have, for instance, you being a goal scoring midfielder, we simply haven't had the chance to see that in a green shirt yet. The level of assists you've had over the last few years for both Barnsley and for Aston Villa. What is this squad capable of?
I think it's capable of more than what it's showing, definitely. I obviously play in the Championship, and you watch the Championship every single week. It's a competitive, good league, you know what I mean, without a doubt. The majority of our players are in the Championship or low Premier League, but are you telling me that, like Northern Ireland, say for instance, who came to the Aviva last week, have got a better squad than us and they played some good football? Definitely not, you know what I mean? I don't feel like we're probably maximising what we have right now. And we probably as players just want to show what the quality we have. It's hurtful. It's not nice, to hear people say it's a terrible squad, because we really feel that that's not the case. There is quality in that squad without a shadow of a doubt. And hopefully now it's an exciting time. Hopefully now, with the right man in place, that he can get that quality out of the lads that I know that there is in that group without a doubt.
I look back, Nathan, I look back at certain games throughout my career with Ireland, and you've got to hold your hands up against some of the bigger nations that you face and kind of go, look, they're a better team than us. You have to suck it up to a degree. But you've hit the nail on the head. Last week against Northern Ireland, I think it was the straw that broke the camel's back, because the level of players they have on paper isn't as good as ours. But our lads were chasing shadows, lacked that idea. That must have been a frustrating watch for the players. Whether they were playing or on the bench or part of the squad. Conor, it must have been a difficult night, that one in particular.
Yeah, definitely. It was. You look at their squad. You even look at the Wales squad that came to Ireland. When Harry Wilson scored that goal, I think we had 6 or 7 Premier League players, and they had 2 or 3, something like that, and they played good football that night as well. I think maybe when I first joined the squad, you had the likes of John O'Shea, Darren Murphy, Wes, Glenn, Stephen Ward, people who had hundreds of caps between them, and they probably didn't need as much info and as guidance, you know what I mean, because they had huge amounts of experience. I think obviously with the younger and inexperienced squad that's there now, we needed every help that we needed possible. We needed all the info we needed possible to compete at that level, and that's where I think we found it frustrating, because international football is such a high quality, and lads, I've seen that over the last 12 months. The results haven't been great. But like you said, and I'll keep saying it, I definitely know that there is quality in that squad without a shadow of a doubt, definitely.
Go on then, Conor, tell us what you're saying in your Irish team WhatsApp group. Who do you want as the new manager?
Listen, I'm
someone
not
who'll pick you.
Tell you anyone, just in case that manager doesn't get the job, and then I'm
the two front runners are obviously Mick McCarthy and Stephen Kenny. How aware would you have been of what Stephen Kenny's been doing with Dundalk over the last few years?
I've been keeping an eye on it, of course. Obviously Cork City and Dundalk would have been the top two sides in the last couple of years, and being from Cork, obviously I keep an eye on the Cork City results all the time. They've gone head to head quite a few times, so I've heard only good things about Stephen. I know he's a front runner at the minute, and same with Mick. I've obviously played against his teams a lot of the years over here in the Championship, so two good names, and whoever it is, hopefully it's an exciting time now, and hopefully whoever comes in can get the best out of the squad, because like I've said over this interview a few times, there is quality in the squad without a doubt.
Well, if it's either of those two, you'll definitely be getting a game with that response. On a serious note, you've got the derby on Sunday against Birmingham. Good luck with that. It's a massive game for you.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining us, Conor.
No problem.
See you soon,
guys. Take care.
Good fella. And we haven't seen the best of him in an Ireland shirt. What I have seen closely at club level over the last years, and it's it typifies a lot of our players. And if you can raise that collectively with 5, 6, 7, 8 of those players, then it's a different performance, obviously. And he keeps on going about the detail. What struck you there?
Well, I think in a different way, he very much backed up with what Matt Doherty was saying. And even...
But he's very appreciative of the fact that Martin was the one who captained.
Exactly.
And so he should be.
And I'm sure he will always be grateful for that. But definitely the sense that even within the squad, there was a feeling that, I don't want to say we're on the road to nowhere, but that there's no sign of this turning around, that something is going to come in and reignite the spark within this group. That the last year, it sounds as though, has just taken too much out of everybody. And again, I think it feeds in to, he said it himself, modern footballers from a young age are probably overcoached. Like, we'll have John Giles in this evening, and John would say, you know, you're a midfielder, you're a footballer, it's easy. It should be easy to you.
With all due respect to Johnny, he's obviously a lot older than I am, and I would agree with large parts of that. You know, where you're nurturing days, and if I was in development football now, I would be kind of portraying to players and trying to get across to players. You have to take responsibility. You have to lead in games. There has to be an accountability that lays at your doorstep. You can't always look elsewhere. Look to the sideline. You can't always look at your iPad at half time and see where you're supposed to be. You have to take responsibility. So I would agree with that. But that's the hand he's been dealt, though, man. That's what he's got to deal with. So then you have to adapt as the manager.
Oh, 100%. But it's noticeable, he mentioned several times the experienced players who've left the squad. I would say that they were very good at getting that message across, that John O'Shea is very capable of using his experience from Manchester United, the things he's learned, and been able to adapt them. Even though, like, that's something that struck me from the Irish squad for years, is that there's almost a lack of trust at times of each other. That John O'Shea wouldn't play the same balls at Ireland that he would at Manchester United, because quite simply, when he gave it to Paul Scholes, he knew he could relax for 5 minutes. Sure. Whereas here, he knows he's not playing with players of a similar calibre, so there's an automatic confusion in that. But clearly the loss of all this experience hasn't helped matters either. And the younger players coming through, as we say, I say younger players, like, we're still talking about guys who are 24, 25, but they have been brought up to learn the game in a different way. That follow orders, and don't step out of line. Don't be the rogue element.
Yeah, that's the cut-off point when you're looking towards those age groups. And I've said it numerous times in the last year, that that change of the guard, and even John O'Shea, when he wasn't playing, he was still a vital part of that squad. Been able to kind of calm things around the hotel, lift spirits with the experience he had. Unbelievably good pro, unbelievably good fella. Someone like Johnny Walters, who's not there at the moment, similar, really popular amongst the players, can take that type of flack, can take the crap from Keane.
And Seamus Coleman, in fairness to him, I think he said that when I spoke to him after the game on Monday night, that over the last year, some of us have had to step up a little bit more than we did previously, and maybe there was too much. Well, Seamus has clearly, particularly in recent months, has stepped up and been more of a vocal presence. But there was this vacuum, it seems, of players leaving and younger players not being ready to step up because at club level they're not expected to, or maybe they feel they're not playing at a high enough level. Maybe if the guys who are playing championship football don't feel they can come in and start telling people what the deal is here, because there's Premier League players around the place. It all just adds to a sense of confusion and means the role of manager is more important than ever.
Look, it's a tough time, really tough time. But can you imagine if we were here like this week and the decision hadn't been made, which we didn't think was going to be made? Like, I would have been parking this up on 10 minutes and going like, right, let's just park this till February, March. Maybe chat about the draw and who we get and things like that. But like,
literally last Thursday night after the Northern Ireland game, with John Giles on air, and our first thing was, what can you say that's new? Nothing. Like, we've seen this, we know what's coming, we know what's happening, and nothing is changing. So at least the change has come, and by listening to Matt Doherty last night, listening to Conor Hourihane there, I think the players needed it.
The players needed it. Yeah, it was, regardless of what they said, it was evident from the performances and what's gone on in the last 12 months. So it was very much needed. And regardless of what way the FAI go, there is going to be an upturn. I have no doubt about that.
No, I'm still very confident we will qualify for Euro 2020, regardless of whether it's Mick McCarthy or Stephen Kenny.
Because of the third bite of the cherry.
Exactly. I just think there is enough in that squad to bring us to a slightly higher level, which is all we need. We just need to be we don't need to be massively better. I just think we need to be a little bit better. and we'll qualify. But I think for Irish football, most definitely, Stephen Kenny is the one that will give us the bigger boost.
Possibly.
You're turning.
Nah, I'm only
You're
joking.
turning.
I just gave you a little dangle there. We're going to move things on ever so slightly to a nation who are looking a little bit better than we are. I'm delighted to say.
Things are cyclical.
Mr. Henry Winter joins us on the line. Henry, thanks for taking a little bit of time out.
Hi, Keith. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Henry.
Henry, before we chat England, which I know you're very, very passionate about, can you give me your thoughts on the Martin O'Neill, Roy Keane decision yesterday? Did it come as a surprise to you?
Well, first and foremost, a tournament isn't great without your fantastic fans. I mean, it's, I go to loads of tournaments, and when your fans are there, they're absolutely brilliant. They add to the occasion. So as a football fan and someone who's an inveterate tournament goer, whether England are there or not, and they're usually there at the moment, but in terms of the atmosphere of a tournament is always better when your brilliant fans are there. So, look, absolutely say that for a start. I was in Paris with Thierry Henry's sort of double handball, and I thought it was disgusting then. So, look, I've followed your situation with interest. I know it's been an extraordinary 24 hours for you. I'm a huge fan of Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane, but I think it's probably the right decision. I'm looking at it completely detached, just looking at the results and some of the performances. I think it's probably the right decision. I know you've got a huge debate now about Mick McCarthy. I love Mick to bits. He's brilliant company. He's a good manager, underestimated, wise old fox, but I'm not a huge fan of going back. I think you've got to look forward.
Yeah, look, I think that's the general consensus over here as well, Henry. Moving towards your nation, which is absolutely flying at the moment, and you've covered for a long, long time with huge passion. How surprised, or are you surprised, with how successful Gareth Southgate has done since his promotion from the 21 job?
I think when you're very close to it and you're covering it all the time, you are slightly surprised because you're used to so many disappointments with England. And, in the last, 5 months, I've seen England reach 2 semi-finals, which is extraordinary. I've seen them play without fear, which is always the key thing. But when I watch, say, the Republic of Ireland, I go back, sort of 30, 35 years and see your players there. When they put on the shirt, just the courage, there was a real courage to play. There was a real togetherness. I looked and watched England, and the shirt has weighed heavily on them. It's inhibited them. I think that's the most important thing that Southgate has addressed. I think he's taken the fear out of it, partly through, might seem a little bit parochial, but improving relationships with the media. He's got the players to sort of talk. So on the eve of the World Cup, Danny Rose came out and spoke to a group of journalists and told us about his depression. Raheem Sterling talked fairly emotively about what happened to his father and his relationship with his father, and who was gunned down when Raheem, I think, was 2, and why Raheem has that tattoo. So explaining the players their own stories and making them out to be the people and flesh and blood that they are, and giving us their sort of backstory. And then, of course, we pass that on to the fans. So there's more of a re-engagement, a reconnection, as Southgate calls it, between the players and the media and the players and the fans. I mean, it's only 18 months ago that England fans were walking out, turning their backs on the England players in Malta, away game in Malta. So I think that's brilliant. And, of course, once that fear has been removed, they go out and express themselves far more. Look, there are obvious tactical reasons which you would understand far better than I about why England have started playing better, particularly this 4-3-3 system, which we've seen since the World Cup. But I think it's mainly been psychological. And Southgate, because he went through the maelstrom of what happened to him at Euro 96, he's basically saying, well, listen, no criticism from the press. Nothing that can surround England can be as anguish-making as what I went through then. So I'm just going to go for it. And the players are following suit.
Henry, just to link what Gareth Southgate is doing with England and the conversation we're having around the Ireland job at the moment and what the role should be for the Irish manager, whether it should be just results for the senior team or a greater role overlooking youth teams and basically having their hand in everything. It feels as though Southgate is deep-rooted in every aspect of English football. He's a full understanding of what's happening at underage level, from the under-21 job and the learnings that he got there into the senior job. Was that almost flukish because of what happened with Sam Allardyce that Southgate ended up in this role with all that knowledge? Or was there actually a concerted plan by the FA to grow Gareth Southgate with the under-21 job into the senior role at some stage and have this sort of influence?
I think that was probably the longer term plan. And then Southgate said initially when he was approached post Hodgson that he wasn't ready for it or the structure wasn't quite right. But I think very much Dan Ashworth, Gareth Southgate is one of his protégés, is probably too strong a word because Southgate's very much his own man. But what Southgate went and did about 8-9 years ago, he went round the country, he went to, and I know this is a debate that I'm sure you've been having, and he went to the counties, he went to the leagues, he went to all the sort of junior age groups and said, listen, it's absolutely pointless putting tiny kids on big pitches with big goals and parents close by shouting at them. They're not going to develop like that. So what he did, he managed to persuade, and it was through Southgate's strength of personality and one or two sort of unsung heroes within the FA who went, and they managed to persuade the leagues and the counties who, sadly, many of them were more worried about spending their budgets on how many trophies and medals they can get for the end of the year, not how many players that they can develop. Southgate persuaded them to bring in smaller-sided games, smaller goals, keep the parents slightly further back from the pitch, let the kids play, let them develop. And you look at, say, like, probably, the best team in England at the moment in the Premier League is Manchester City. They're not giants. So many players have been lost in the system coming through the age groups, coming through grassroots football and going into academies because people didn't think they were big enough. Now, the role model is a Raheem Sterling, is a De Bruyne slightly taller, but Bernardo Silva, David Silva as well. These terrific technical players. And that's, Raheem Sterling, English. He's the type of player which English football should be developing. And I think more and more of those are coming through, seeing it Manchester City, next generation, Phil Foden. And that was partly, and the next generation will come partly because Southgate went out there and he said, listen, we have got to get rid of this long ball. We've got to get rid of the Charles Hughes, the Pomo, position of maximum opportunity, direct football. Let's play through the thirds more. And I think Southgate, because he comes from a generation which is financially independent as players, and because of what he went through at Euro 96, could actually go to the counties, persuade them, and now they can't. So, absolutely, coming back to your question, long term, I think it was always their plan to have Southgate as manager. He spent a lot of time working with these kids in junior age groups, not just with the under-21s, which obviously had which must have admitted a very unsuccessful tournament, but also he looked to the under-16s. And when you go to St George's Park now, you bump into players, and Raheem Sterling's just been playing FIFA with the under-17s. Right. There's a mixing between the generations. There is that pathway, and that's so big. The great thing is that England have now got some terrific young players coming through. There's, of course, finally, there's a debate about how often they get used in the Premier League. Do they need to go off to Germany to play like Jadon Sancho or something? But there are good kids there, and Southgate's been very much the father of that.
Yeah, I never realised his influence was so vast on English football in recent years. And that strength of personality, I think he's really shown that even since the World Cup, because we've become used to England managers and probably England players being allowed to rest on their laurels. And so many of those players came back with their reputations massively enhanced. Like, I think in particular of someone like Kieran Trippier, who came back from the World Cup and talked about as the best right back in the world. And you look at that English side now, he might be back to third choice because he's gone with youth. He's gone with players in form with their club. And he's got that blend, it seems, of competitiveness and assuredness in the squad that most England managers have really struggled with.
Well, I agree. I mean, I think when they came back, I don't think they came back feeling arrogant, feeling that everyone was going to greet them at the airport and throw their beers up in the air. I think they came. There's a great humility about this squad. There's none of the sort of the arrogance that we've had in previous generations. They're kind of good guys, without getting sort of too emotional about it. But, there would always be one or two in the squad who you think, well, you want what people will call a good tourist, a good citizen. Will they cause trouble if they're bored in South Africa or wherever at one of the two tournaments, which has happened in the past? There's no one in that squad who you think actually is a troublemaker. I mean, there's some parts of some newspapers which give Raheem Sterling a bit of stick. But actually, when you get talking to him, he's just a nice, down-to-earth guy who just wants to play football, who's, obviously he's making money, so he looks after people in his life, buys his mother a house, and that's absolutely brilliant. And it does make me laugh that he gets a little bit of criticism from some former English players about going and spending money on a house, when some of these players haven't spent their money wisely and are now sort of having to, do other things and are complaining about the modern generation. Whereas Raheem Sterling, actually, I think he's a fantastic role model and is a type of, for me, I think he's England's most important player, probably along with Pickford and Kane, those three. So, but there is, coming back to your point, there's a humility about these kids. They come back, there's no arrogance to them. I had a long chat with Fabian Delph at the World Cup when he was talking about, actually, let's see if we can just try and change the nation in terms of make it a unified place. The debate, which was quite a surprise with England, was actually about Brexit. You wouldn't have had a conversation about Brexit with previous English generations, but actually, they've all got a view. They all want to talk about it. They're all concerned about it. They want the England team, well, actually, they want England to reflect the national team, which is young, ambitious, diverse, inclusive, and I think that is great. Anyway, I said to Fabian Delph at the end of it, I said, look, this is absolutely brilliant, but will the players still be as open to the media and as accessible to the fans after the tournament? We said, yeah, look, we're not going to get arrogant. We haven't won anything yet. We know we're not as good as, say, France. I know Kylian Mbappe. And I think there is that element to them. And the one other thing I would say, which has really changed and has really helped, social media. Everyone sort of looks at the negatives of social media and the abuse that people get, and it is despicable, the trolling, and Facebook and Twitter needs to do more. But it's also opened up a passage for players, like Chris Smalling today. I know he's not in the England squad anymore, but he's doing some brilliant things with a homeless charity in Manchester, and he just tweeted about that, not to make himself look better, but actually to help the charity. And everyone's been saying, oh, that's a different side to Chris Smalling. So I think there has been this reconnection by mainstream media like myself, and also through social media.
Yeah, Henry, look, I've thoroughly enjoyed watching the evolution of this side under Gareth Southgate. I can only see it continuing with the young players that he's blooding through. And it's going to be a good watch. Thanks for taking the call, Henry.
My pleasure. Good luck, guys.
Thanks, Henry.
Yeah, I have been impressed. Very, very impressed with how he's gone about it, and the humility element that Henry's touching on. It's shone through, wasn't it? I lived in England since 1996, right after Euro 96, and it was the same old story. Get to a tournament, build them up, and then knock them down. And he was right about the egos of the players during that period, and the whole Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes debate. And
well, that was a waste. The golden generation was a wasted generation.
I agree.
Without
But I
question.
do think the way we're talking about the Irish players, what they need, the academies they've come through, Southgate has got a group of players that he can coach that will buy into team meetings. Not
because they've grown
team bonding,
they've grown,
not
they've grown
drinking
used to
team
that.
bonding, but like games, darts with the media. Go back 10-15 years ago. Do you think Frank Lampard or Steven Gerrard would have had a game of darts with Henry Winter?
Oh, you give me
someone from
7
the
out of 10
Observer?
in the game against Fulham at the weekend. Yeah.
So I think that has changed, and it's coincided with the type of player that's available to coach now. So they're flying.
God damn them.
God damn them. Where are you the weekend?
Where am I? I'm at the Vitality Stadium.
When was the last time
Bournemouth
you were
against Arsenal. I haven't been there in a couple of seasons now.
The grubs there is all right.
Yeah,
actually.
that's okay.
Yeah, it's
Good.
decent. There you go.
Delighted with it.
Nathan
Yeah,
Murphy.
with Alan
McLaughlin.
McLaughlin. Bournemouth against Arsenal. Should be a decent game.
Yeah, should be.
Still not fully
Callum
convinced by
Wilson.
Arsenal. This will be a proper test of them.
Yeah. What do you mean fully convinced? Like that they're top 4 material?
Oof. No.
Oh, either do I, but I do think he's done a really good
Well,
job.
I think he's done a good job. I think they have a long way to go.
Expectations.
Where they are this time next week, I guess, or next year is when we have a good sense when he's bought some players in.
Transfer windows, maybe.
But Bournemouth play good football.
Yeah, I really like them. Keep an eye out for
Where are
Lerner
you?
in midfield. I am at Ipswich Villa tomorrow. Watford Liverpool.
That's why you're being so nice to Conor Hourihane.
Saturday. No, Ipswich West Brom. No, it wasn't. He's on Sunday, isn't he? Watford Liverpool on Saturday, and I'm back at Molineux by popular demand on Sunday.
Heroes welcome. Roll out the red carpet.
Probably not.
Oh, really?
You know, I
Did you leave in bad terms?
Scored for West Brom.
Of course you did.
And celebrates like it's my first goal in professional football.
You're not smart with these things. You don't want to burn your bridges.
Real.
There's a nice corporate
Emotions come
sector
out.
there. There's a nice corporate sector there. You could be.
There's no filter.
That's the problem. That's the
What,
problem.
doing a Steve Bull?
I thought you were going to say do a Stephen Hunt. So you're Team Mick then? Is that what you're saying?
I am Team Mick.
Okay.
And you're Team Stephen.
Yeah, I just think. Listen, Mick McCarthy he's a great man. He will do a good job, I'm sure. I just feel that for so many people who've spoken about the good of Irish football for the last few years, that you're undermining yourself in a way by saying all these things that need to be done and then saying, well, actually, all that matters right now is qualifying for Euro 2020.
No, I haven't been saying all those things. And and in terms of how that can be done, doesn't solely lie with the manager, the top of the tree. You can put things in place by Lee Carsey, Stephen Reid, Shay Givens.
So you wouldn't
with the
be what you wouldn't be
21s.
happy with is if we ended up in a situation where Mick McCarthy and Terry Connor are 1 and 2, and that's all.
That's it.
And that's it.
No, I don't think I would be happy with that at all. No. So the reason I have Mick in there is because the experience, how he will get us through it. I do think he'll qualify it. There's a risk element. There's more of a risk element with Stephen Kenny. Is there probably more of a reward? Yeah, probably. So it's one of those. It's a big decision, isn't it? But anyway, we'll have to leave it there.
Good man.
Take it easy.
Enjoy the weekend.
That's all we got time for. Been a good show. Better than it would have been. I cannot lie. As per usual, available to download all the usual platforms. We shall see you next week. Take care.